All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Berlin Board of Ed on Monday, January 9th. It is 6:04, and we're going to call this meeting to order. We're going to start out with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're going to start out with the report by our student representatives.
All right, so we hope everyone had a really great break and wonderful New Year. So to start off, on January 17th, half of our senior class will be presenting their senior capstones. So we present during the day, and then in the evening there will be some students presenting, but as you can see on the screen, there's also going to be tables set up around the A-Gym from 6 o'clock to 7:15, where students can really show off all the hard work they've put into these projects all semester long. So please feel free to stop by and ask them a lot of questions.
And then on January 26th, from 5:30 to 7, the Unified Theater will be putting on their production of A Night at the Movies. We know just how much hard work and practice all of these students have put into rehearsing and writing and ultimately performing. So please try to attend to show them some well-deserved support.
And now a bit of a winter sports report. So men's and women's basketball have been having a very productive season so far. There's still a lot of games left, so we wish them the best of luck the rest of the season. Hockey, following their win at the state championship last year, has also been having a great season. And then a big congratulations to the wrestling team for amazing seasons they're having so far. In their most recent match against Maloney, they won 60-12. And then the men's swim team had a tough loss against Connor this Friday, but there was a big shout out to swimmers Matt Jamrosic and their diver Aiden Melnick for exceptional performances at the meet. And then indoor track has also been reportedly having a really great season and looks to be very successful coming into the next few weeks.
And then the ROCAP National Social Studies Honor Society closed their applications to juniors and seniors on January 6th. The society encourages civic engagement and to gain an exceptional understanding of social studies in general. And then on January 16th, the school district will honor Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy of nonviolent protests in order to advocate for the civil rights of Black Americans. One misunderstood fact about Martin Luther King Day is that his actual birthday is on January 15th, not on the 16th as most people believe.
That's all we have for tonight.
Thank you so much. Committee reports.
No finance.
Okay, because we met before the last meeting. Okay. Jamie, did you guys meet?
I think they met. I wasn't there. Were you there for the?
No, but we already had meeting. We didn't have a meeting since our last
Okay.
board meeting.
Perfect.
Oh, we didn't.
Tracy?
We just met, the
Thank
Community
you.
Engagement Committee just met, just to kind of get some ideas rolling around, talking about social media and the possibility of reaching out to the citizen again and having a sit down with them hopefully within the next couple of weeks. This was just an informational kind of like get to know what we're doing. And so we have another meeting coming up in a couple weeks.
Thank you. We don't have a correct report, so we'll move on to correspondence to the board.
No correspondences before this evening.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to audience of citizens. If there is anyone who would like to approach the board, you will be given 3 minutes and state your name and address. We will not respond, but we will take into consideration what is brought to our attention. Would anyone like to approach the board? Okay. All right, moving on to our consent agenda. Do I have a motion for consideration?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Melissa, second by Matt. Any discussion? Okay, we're gonna move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 8-0. New business. So there's been a request to name the band rooms at Berlin High and McGee. Would you like to speak on that a little bit?
Sure. There's been a request to name both the band rooms at Berlin High School and McGee Middle School, as Julia mentioned. The McGee band room was to be named after Ron Campaneria, and if you look through the documentation here, it talks about the service he had from 1969 to 2004 as a music teacher in the schools below: Berlin High School, McGee Middle School, Willard Elementary School, Griswold Elementary School, Hubbard Elementary School, Percival Elementary School, and Kensington Grammar School. Position served: music teacher, band director of band, director, district teacher of the year, and cooperating teacher for university students. There's a bunch of students who have, listed their support for Ron. I knew Ron personally working at McGee, a very dedicated individual who would do anything for students. A person of great character and definitely committed to the Berlin Public Schools just based on the service, but, of outstanding reputation. I don't know if there's any questions about Ron or about the service and so on. I can speak a little bit about Paul Karam. I did not know Paul in his prime, I guess I would say, when Paul was at the high school. But Paul, when we needed someone to fill in for a music teacher, Paul came back and did that for us. And he was magnificent in that capacity, dedicated to the schools, was willing to do whatever, not just come in and do his hours, but was here, in the evenings, picking up all the pieces when he did come back to work for us. So I did have an opportunity to get to know Paul on a personal level. Again, you can read, 1966 to 1998, and then the schools listed below, similar to Ron: the high school, the middle school, Willard, Griswold, Hubbard, Percival, Kensington. And you can see there's testimonies from various individuals, as well as, current music teachers supporting both of these individuals who worked with them. So I think that in this case, we talked about naming such as the basketball courts. In this case, both individuals have been deceased the 5 years, and they're two names that do stand out in the music programs. So I'll turn it over to the board for discussion, I guess.
So our next step, according to the policy, policy 1181, it's the last paragraph. It says, the process shall be initiated by action of the Board of Education or by presentation to the Board of Education of a petition representing the signatures of 100 registered voters of the town. So we received that, that's in our packet. Once initiated, the President of the Board of Education shall select a subcommittee for purpose of reviewing the proposal. The subcommittee shall consist of the following minimum representation. So the board chair will serve as ex officio, the superintendent as ex officio, and then the following will be members of the committee: a member of the F&O committee, finance and operation, an administrator, a teacher, a parent of a student enrolled in Berlin Public Schools, and 2 residents of the community not represented above. So I think the next step would be forming the committee and gathering interest from board members. However, I want to turn it over to you guys to discuss.
It's a touchy topic, right? Because people will say things, and I'm about to be one of them, that is going to offend people, right? So, because there's a group of people who want to have things named for people. But I question, these are classrooms. In essence, we're talking about classrooms. Yes, we call them the band room, but they're classrooms in our school. So how far do you take this naming process? Do we then name physics rooms after a physics teacher that was a good teacher? Do we then do math rooms because it's a math teacher? I understand that people want to memorialize folks, and we have a lot of magnificent people over the years. And maybe the board needs to consider something like a memorial wall or something where this all happens, as opposed to the naming of space. Now, I know that Mr. Saline is not here tonight, but he would say, name it all, and then we don't have to worry about it anymore. But I think we need to consider it seriously about, how far does it go? At some point, is it going to be the Brian Benigni superintendent's office?
I don't meet the criteria. 30 years of Berlin, I'm sorry, but I think you bring up a valid point about the classrooms. But I also think the band room is the band room. It's never going to be a different classroom. It's the band room. But I also want to say I think this comes on the heels of just naming the gymnasium. And so I wonder, as you're saying, what's next to be named? So we decide to name these two rooms, and you're saying, what's next, what's gonna come forward next to be named?
Yeah, and I don't mean to be callous about it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be very objective about, and black and white about it, right? I didn't know each of the individuals, and I don't know the person who brought this forward. I'm just thinking about the board, and our decisions as a board is, most of the things that were named prior to me getting on 7 years ago, with two exceptions. The basketball coach is now floor, and Jim Day's, the B-Gym, right? The tennis courts were named, but that was not a board decision. Those were town properties, and they worked right around us on that one. So, I just don't know.
I think
Where
your
we-
concern
where we
is
fall.
valid, and I think another piece of business we need to cycle back to as a board is revisiting this policy, and we talked about that after the basketball court naming. We said we would revisit it, but we wanted to give it a little bit of time after, just so it didn't look like, oh, because of Coach
Well, but
V, now we're changing it. But I think now, this has been submitted, we'll go through and follow.
So I think we
The
have to go through the
policy-
process.
Right, but I think we as a board need to look at this policy and see where we are.
Well, we just revised it to extend, haven't we?
We did the 5 years, yes,
So
that's.
we did
that's
just
adopted.
revise it
Okay,
That was just the
to
time.
extend the amount of time. All I'm saying is where does this go? Do we start naming every classroom? And yes, we can call them the band room, but they're not accessible to the public. They're accessible to the students. It's no different than any other classroom, right? The gymnasiums are open to the public, there's contests there. The libraries and the auditorium is to the public. The libraries, at times, is to the public because meetings and so forth are held there. But the band rooms are designed, the physics room is a physics room. It's never gonna be anything else because of the way it was structured, right? So that's all my point. And I'm sure that I'm getting, lots of hate social media out there now, but realistically, these are the conversations we should be having.
But I think it is up to the board to decide what warrants a naming. And that's something.
and that's what I think
Right.
though this just went through last month, I think it's worth, you bring up valid points, I think it's worth kinda, I think with a policy like this, it might take several rounds of revision.
So, yeah, so again,
Is that where you were?
the policy says that we put a committee together and we meet, and whatever the board decides, I will support. I just think that we need to ask the questions.
I don't think, Matt, and I don't think, I'm speaking for myself, but that you're personalizing anything towards these two individuals as not being great contributors to the Berlin Public Schools and to the community.
Yeah, no
I
denial
think you're
about
looking
that.
at it
I
from a
mean-
bigger sense of, okay, where's the next step if we do indeed do this? What's the next thing to be named? And are we going into an area where everything's gonna be named? And, I know you say classroom, but is there more to be named, and should it be? And that is a board decision.
If anyone is interested in serving on the committee, just send me an email, cause we're gonna be putting the committee together. So if you want,
I guess by
You are
choice,
remem-
I'm already on, so.
right, cause you're a member of the FNO, but, it says it can include other members as well, so if anyone sitting at this table is interested, just please let me know.
So I guess for me, it begs the question, Matt's point in the subsequent discussion beg the question of whether the board should determine the spaces or places that are eligible for naming. So that it doesn't become this sort of ripple effect or domino effect, right? But so that you can identify, these are the things that, very discreetly.
So through
are-
our revision, we should clarify what.
I'm just asking that question.
I think it would make it far more clear.
I think we'd have a lot of petitions once we actually say this is what we're naming.
It may be, but if you're establishing the
agree.
protocol, no, I know that, I think if you're establishing the protocol and you identify to which the protocol applies, then that might make it a little clearer.
The other thing I can do is, I can reach out to Shipman and ask if they'll give us other policies, or reach out to other school districts to see what they have in their policies. And naming of auditoriums and how they go about naming and what the process is, to see if our policy, even though Shipman did look at our policy, if there's pieces that we should have in or things that we shouldn't have in the policy, so.
Anything else from the board on this? Down into the table.
No, because I don't want to make, no.
No, I think a lot of great questions came up because I didn't even think, once again, my child's is just in the elementary school right now, so I'm not privy to like all of the spaces in all of the schools. So when Matt brought that up, like we said, it's band room, but it's also a classroom, so it just brought up a really good question. Yeah, and just a different perspective of looking at it. So I definitely think it's just something, like Julia said, maybe it's more clear. Maybe this is broad and we just need to look into it a little more.
All right, I just have one thing to say then.
Yeah.
So we
Please.
talked about this with, was it Coach V? I think we had a discussion about this. We have so many talented staff, and 20 years from now, unfortunately, we're going to have other people that pass away and should receive the same honor, quite frankly. So it's difficult for me, and I had said this before, is that it would be nice to have an area that is, that you can memorialize these individuals, whether it be students, staff, just great contributors to the community. And because, who's to say that, can you rename someone's gym after 30 years? You really can't. That's just tacky. So, but you have all these people that you want to honor. So if we're going to do it, then do it the appropriate way and allow all those individuals to be honored. So I struggled with this last time. I'm struggling with it now because the policy needs to reflect an area, if you will. I don't know, just something else where everybody can be honored, because we are running out of space.
That was my suggestion.
And we
of
talked
a
about that
wall
before.
of honor, a wall of
Yeah.
memorial, or of honor, however you want to do
Yeah.
that, someplace where we get to honor these people who have contributed so much,
Exactly.
but it's not necessarily space.
Nope.
All right, that's all I got to say.
So Brian and I can talk about how we can add this in to a future meeting, and we can talk about this policy more as a board. I think it's really important that we do spend time going through and seeing what other boards are doing, how other schools and districts name things, and have further discussion on what will be best for our community.
But in the meantime.
In the
we do
meantime,
need
I have to form
we
the
need
committee.
Take care of the request that we have.
Yep.
Move that forward.
So as soon as we have the committee formed, I will let you guys know who is on the committee. If you want to be on the committee, just send me an email letting me know. Okay. Moving on to the most exciting part of our whole year, starting the budget. So we are gonna start out with the superintendent's budget, and then we will get into all of the other budgets. Sorry, guys.
Do you want me, typically, I present them, my back's to the audience, do you want me presenting from here, or do you want me presenting from there?
I don't
Rather-
care, it's up to the board.
Whatever you're most comfortable with.
You can present, so then,
Wherever you're comfortable, Brian.
Exactly.
I'll present
Present
from
here
here, I'll
if you
present
want.
from here, that's the way the audience could see, and then everyone that's getting straight. So.
yeah, well, then your back won't be to the camera.
Right, so, thank you for the opportunity to present the 23-24 school budget. Before I begin, I can say you that in my years as a superintendent, this has probably been the most difficult budget to start with. And the reason it has been is that it's really at a point where there's limited reductions to the budget. And I recognize the economic times that we're in. I recognize that inflation, the cost of goods are up on all of us. The cost of utilities, fuel is definitely at a new height, a new level that we're all feeling. But within that, trying to keep things at a level or as tight as possible, knowing that the Board of Finance did ask us, or ask at a meeting, I know that you didn't direct me to do that, to try to come up with a 2% budget, which I can tell you a 2% budget would be devastating to the Board of Education, to the educational system, in terms of the programs and staffing that we offer. But with that request, we did ask that the administration, in creating their budget, request no new staff members for this budget, so you will see only one new staff member in the budget, which I'll speak to momentarily. We also asked the administration to have no increase in their supply/equipment accounts at their building. This will be the 4th year that all buildings have taken a 0 for their supply accounts. And you may say, well, they're making do, and yes, they are making do. But if you think about that, a pallet of paper is almost double in the price. The increase in supplies has gone up also, as everything else has in the last few years. So I just ask you to keep that in perspective as we go through the budget. So there we go. Goals for the 23-24 budget. Provide a quality education system, obviously, is paramount. Goal number 2, prepare students for multiple options and opportunities. We don't want students not to have the options and opportunities moving forward upon graduation. 3, maintain favorable class size and course offerings. There's an expectation at the Berlin Public Schools of our class sizes at the elementary level, as well as the course offerings that we have at the middle school and high school. Number 4, consistent supportive technology. We've seen throughout the pandemic, we have an excellent technology infrastructure here. We have one-to-one devices. We have tech integration specialists. Our students and staff are well versed with technology. I would rate them as well as any district, and we don't want to lose that. We recognize that regardless of what profession the students go into and what walk of life, technology will play a role in it. And now, lastly, commitment to a safe learning environment for all students and staff. So if you take a look at those 5 goal areas, this budget is a representation of trying to meet all 5 of those and maintaining in those areas. What's behind, or why do we do what we do, and what do the numbers actually represent? The mission: we empower our students to be authentic, curious learners, kind, compassionate leaders in the community and the world. We don't want to lose that these numbers represent that, and obviously our tagline has been, our core values, our purpose, our passion, and our pride. Berlin's beliefs about learning, I won't read through all of them. Again, they tie back to the goals, a little more detailed about safe environment, challenging, support all students to reach their personal goals, that we're working with all students to have high expectations, not just a certain group. Learning is enhanced by a cycle of goal setting, that practice, feedback, and reflection, that whole part that we work with staff to be reflective practitioners and work to improve. And students are empowered to engage by choice in authentic learning experiences. You'll see that throughout the budget. You know that last year, putting in the career college readiness piece, that's been a priority for the district. The last part, our Berlin vision of the graduate, which we'll share with you recently. It just gives you a look at those areas that we're focusing on, K-12, the communication, collaboration, that our curriculum is having our students ready in these areas, and that the dollars tie back to having students be ready in the 6 areas here. Superintendent's budget at a glance. Oftentimes our budget is said you're spending X amount of dollars, it's often compared to the towns. There is a difference between ours and the towns, not just the numbers. That difference is the contractual obligations. 70% of our budget is directly tied back to staffing. It's tied back to actually human beings being in positions, which it should be. It's an educational system. There's another ratio. You look at any educational system, there's a ratio of students to staff. That student to staff ratio is oftentimes how districts are rated, how colleges are rated, how different schools are rated. So it is important that we keep our staff at a level that meets a ratio that we've become used to, the community's become used to. So that's the dark blue, 70%. You look at the light blue, you might say, well, you still got 30% to play with on a $50 million budget. So that 30%, you still have $15 million to play with. The light blue really is not negotiable. What I mean by that is the tuitions that we pay for outplacements, whether it's special education, magnet school, we are not able to negotiate that rate. That rate we have to pay. We're bound either by IDEA to put for outplacements. If a student elects to go to a magnet school, they have a right to go. We have to pay that fee. So that 8% for tuition is not something we really have a choice in. We try to develop the best school district we can, so students don't want to leave. We try to develop programs in-house, so students can be educated here in the district, but sometimes that's just not the case to provide the education, and we have to have outplacements. And so that's that 8%, 8% of the budget. Transportation utilities at 5%. We worked with NBT, we shared the contract with you. We think we have an excellent contract with NBT compared to other districts, but we still our transportation utilities is at 5%. And as you know, with the utility prices, it just got raised for all of us this month, that the utility prices, even though we negotiate, are going up at a, I'll say, an alarming rate. So that's 5% in the budget. And the contracted services, you could say that you may be able to negotiate that down, but to think of Power School that's used by 90 some odd, maybe even 100% at this point in the district for each school district as a student management system, to say we could find another contractor at a cheaper rate and then to have all that data work to switch, to not be with a system that's used by most of the state that works well, doesn't make sense. So those contracted services are those systems that we deal with to manage student information, to manage data, to manage conferences, those systems to manage curriculum. Those are those systems, and those typically go up, I'll mention it, but they go up each year too, but that's 11% of the total budget. So when you think about where you can really work with the budget to squeeze down, it's supplies, which is 1%, and then equipment and others, that red and yellow part. Without, yes, you can take individuals that are in the 70% and eliminate positions and programs and reduce contractual obligations also, but there's a change to what the district looks like and what our course offerings are, our class sizes and so on. So the real portion to work with is the 6%. So that's why I share this graph with you. I want to spend a moment on the stacked bar graph. Oftentimes, there's a lot of information here, and I want to try to simplify it for you. The stacked bar graph is simply a way to show, as the left graph shows percentages in each area, the stacked bar graph does it similarly, but it gives you the percentages of where the budget is being spent. So I want you to look at the outer portion, the 1.43 and the 3.43. Those two added together will give you the 4.87, it's rounded, that this year's budget increase is. You'll see it there, it's the 51,466,273. The blue portion is that 70% that you saw in the last graph. To keep the same staff that we have this year and meet their contractual obligation, their raises for non-affiliated, affiliated, all positions, and their medical benefits, we would need 3.43% increase. That's not increasing anything else. We would need a 3.43% increase. The 1.43, that's the red, the green, the blue, the black line there, it's supplies, and the green on top for tuition. That's the rest of the budget, the 1.43. That portion there deals with the contracted services, which I spoke to you about. Inside that contracted services, the ESS program from the middle school that was funded in a grant that no longer be funded through a grant. The transportation utilities I spoke about, the increase there, and I'll get into the exact percentage increases. That portion is the rest of the budget beyond staffing. So the budget increase is 4.87, you see at the top there. That's a superintendent, my proposed budget coming in. I want to spend my rest of my portion explaining to you what makes up that 4.87 and why we're at 4.87. But I want to leave you, before I leave this slide, 3.43% staff, contractual obligations, raises, and insurance to just maintain our staff. So anything below 3.43 would be a reduction in staff. Even asking the administration to come up with a real streamlined budget, the request was no new positions and no increases in supplies. That does not mean that when you look at a school's budget, that they didn't move things within their supply budget, meaning that the science department had a need, so they moved $2,000 out of one account from one department to the science department to give them extra money. But overall, their supply accounts did not increase. So if we held to what everyone requested without new positions and holding their supply accounts flat, we'd be at a 7.01% increase. The facilities request, building and site is now in the operational budget. The only thing that's in the capital budget, which you'll hear about later, is anything over $25,000. So everything that falls below $25,000, the repairing of ceiling tiles, the replacement of floor tiles, anything of that sort is supposed to be in the operational budget, we'd be at 7.91%. We've not funded anything but $20,000 in the building and site account, and that really is, if there's an emergency, something breaks, we have to fix it, we have a little bit of money to do that in one of the schools. So this would have been the budget. Staffing changes, this is the decrease from that 7% to 7.01. The only new position we have it as Griswold right now, it could also be Willard, but Griswold numbers are a little higher. We're concerned that our numbers at the primary level, either at the K or first grade level, that we may need another teacher, otherwise you'd have class sizes at 28 or 29, which is way beyond the typical at that level. So we're gonna hold the position till we see what our K registration looks like. We never know exactly with K, even though we have registration, but there is a concern there. Existing positions previously funded by grants, we have 2 positions that were funded by grant through ESSER that we no longer have those funds. One is our district-wide family communication specialist, that's Nick's assistant, responsible for these board meetings, all of the various video content, streaming of sporting events, streaming of concerts, you know, and what have you, working in the radio and TV production studio. So that's one position we have to move into the operational budget. The second is a reading teacher, moving from the grant into the operational budget. And so those are new to that 217,000 is new to the operational budget. Now we did make reductions, and I wanna just be clear about the reductions. The reductions that were made here are actual positions that we are cutting that are not gonna be here next year. There's a math teacher at Berlin High School and a science teacher. Yes, they are retirements, but they're physical positions that we've had for years. So there's 2 less teachers at the high school. There's also the lead teacher at McGee is here for a cut, a custodian, and then we have building substitutes. As much as I don't wanna cut the building substitutes, because they are working daily and the need for them, even though we did, as you saw in the update, we did get 13 new buildings substitutes in. We just don't know if they're all college students for the next week or so and then they're back. But to try to get the budget at a reasonable level, we had to make those reductions. So we're actually losing 5 positions here, and you can see the reduction. So there's 5 positions that is reduced, and only 1 position added, potentially added for the elementary. New for the fiscal year, I don't wanna think that it's all doom and gloom. There were some things that we felt we had to do or we were mandated to do. The first one is the career pathways. We did offer a CNA course in conjunction with Tunxus outside of the school day. It was very well received, number of students did attend. And the thought was that we would wanna offer that during the school day, so it's available to more students. We anticipate about $100,000 to set up the classroom with the supplies and make the classroom where the course could be offered during the school day, as well as the students doing their on-site, which they'd have to do outside of the school day, but the actual class will be offered during the school day. We have the new position I just shared with you at the elementary, if the numbers necessitate it. And the 34,500 were mandated by the state now, through legislation, that we provide 18 hours of professional development for all paraprofessionals. So there's we don't have a choice in that. There's a 34.5 is what we think we can do that for. And then the reductions here, the addition here, two positions previously funded by the ESSER grants. Those are 2 positions I just talked to you about. That we were adding back in, the reading as well as the media. And then ESS has been funded at the middle school through the ESSER account. ESS has agreed to hold their price flat for next year for us by signing on again, but we need to put that back in the operational budget. You've heard from numerous parents speak to you about ESS and how important it is to work with their students and what it's done for them to be successful. You also heard from a student a couple board meetings ago. So those are the only new items for the 2024 fiscal item. And not so much that they're new, they're items that impact the operational budget to a great degree. So there you have it. It's a 4.87 increase, and the proposed budget increase is above. I'm gonna go through now each line with you separately and spend a minute or 2 on each one. You can see the percentage increases in summary. I'll speak to every one of them. And the thought is, questions are welcome tonight. We also have another meeting on the 23rd. I know that you just received your packet this afternoon, so you'll have time to ask for future questions also. So let me start by the first one. Administrators, affiliated contract increases between 2.25 and 4.6%. When you see the 2.73, that is the average for all of Berlin administrators. That's the average increase for next year. But those increases range between 2.25 and 4.6, depending if there's a step or not for most administrators. 5 administrators are eligible for step increases. Non-affiliated administrators are budgeted at 3%. That just means the number we put in, not knowing what it will be for non-affiliated, is 3%. Certified staff, just a quick breakdown, is 3.35%. 154 teachers are on max step. 110 teachers advance a step. 6 teachers are eligible for salary lane change. And just to note, we have a 50-50 cost sharing with the CCTA. Just that's come up, that people assume that Berlin's paying everything at the Transition Academy. It's a 50-50 split with Cromwell across the board. Typically, there's always questions about our FTE. How many teachers do we have? This is a 6-year look back of our FTE and what we have this year. And then when you look at what it'll be next year, it'll be -2, net out of 2, if we do indeed need to hire the elementary person. So we dropped to 264. Non-certified salaries, I think, at 4.06, you might say, why is this higher? I think that, understanding that we have $50,000 almost that was previously in ESSER. We're now mandated training for paraprofessionals at 35.8, what it was. We have non-affiliated contracts are budgeted at 3%. Increase to per diem substitute account, new rate, as we shared with you at the last board meeting. We do have a new sub rate. We increased it, $25 essentially. And we have custodial overtime. Anticipation, we are losing custodian. We may need to do some custodial overtime to maintain things. So that increases an average up there. So.
Brian, can I ask a question?
Sure.
And it might be Ashley that needs to answer it. Certified staff, what is the contractual increase? Just the what the contract increase, not if there's a lane change, not if there's a step, but what's the contracted increase?
We can get it, I think it's close to 3, Matt. I think it's 3. I remember Tracy was on it. I think it's close to 3.
So we started lower and then went up. Right?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
we also came in at the time under state, remember? 'Cause
Right.
we came under the state average, because they were all
I
negotiating.
can get it.
If you could just provide me with
Yeah,
that for the
absolutely.
next meeting,
Yeah,
that
we
would
can
be
get
great.
that. I know the overall was above 9 for the 3 years.
Right.
I want to say it was close to 10, if not a little over
We
10.
went to mediation, right?
I don't think we made it over 10, though, did we?
We were close to 10, I
We
think.
were close, yeah. I'll have to-
But did it make
If you
it to
just
mediation?
No, we
get
didn't
that
go
for
there.
me, I appreciate it.
Yes.
It made it to mediation. Were you on during that contract? Okay.
All right. I'll get that number. We'll get that exact number. All right. Employee benefits. The town typically sets the medical insurance at 10%. In some years, we're very lucky and been coming at 5. But the town always says it's set at 10. And that's something that those who've been on the board know that comes back to us and we make that adjustment depending on what it actually comes in at a later date. The employer percentage for staff groups has been adjusted to meet the contractual obligations for each group. So what we looked at in the past, looking at why is it at 7.65, you might say? Because we used to look at like paraprofessionals and say, if every paraprofessional took insurance, this is what it would cost us. Now we looked at actually who's taking the insurance and saying we're only gonna project for those, not project for all. So it's we were able to shave it a little tighter than before to bring that number down. And as I said to you, we really looked to come in as low as we could and looking at things to make it as realistic and as accurate as we could. So this could come back to bite us a little bit if more paraprofessionals, especially paraprofessionals that do opt for insurance, if they do need to take the insurance, it would increase from what we have. And the pension account adjustments, that's the other part, that many of the paraprofessionals don't opt in for the pension. So to say they're all gonna take the pension and the district's gonna match what we match is an over approximation of what it's gonna be. We looked at who actually takes it and then project that forward. But it doesn't mean we may not hire 10 new paras that now decide to take it and then change the number a little bit, but we look to be as accurate as possible. Contracted services at 12.83. I think that, the McGee Effective School Solution is a big driver for this. The other portion is that we know all of our operational education systems increase between 3 to 7%. We don't control that, as I said. You say, well, go with a different company. That first year, they may give you a better rate, but if you've been with the company for a number of years, everyone's accustomed to it. To just change something like that, there's a lot of man hours that would go into it, and a lot of training that goes into all staff that utilize it. So that's not always as feasible as it may look.
I'm assuming that we put that in at 7%, the high end of the range.
I'd
It's
say
actually based on what our, depending on which contract service it was, each of them kind of trend in their own way. So Frontline, for example, usually is up 4 or 6 or to 5%. So based on past years, it was done like that.
Okay.
Utilities, I don't think a 21% increase is unreasonable given what's happening to all of our homes with our delivery rate more than doubling this month. The cost of utilities in the previous year and current fiscal year have increased significantly. District continues to monitor trends, but it continues to adjust the usage for appropriately budgeting. So, we did take a look at it. We feel that this number is reflective of it and we can make it. And just again, Berlin and Crown will split the utility cost at the CCTA. I only bring that up because there was a great question about the CCTA and how things were paid. So. This one here, I spent a lot of time speaking with Ashley about why it's 1%, when our contract is 3% with the Britain Transportation. And so the cost of fuel is negotiated annually, and the price per gallon for diesel and gasoline is expected to increase. That's a little increase. But you might say, if it's 3% for an MBT, how can we do this? And it really boils down to the last bullet. The district intends to use a portion of excess cost funds to offset special education transportation. So we believe that our excess cost funds can have that extra 2% plus the fuel cost. We can come in with only a 1% increase. But please understand, transportation we don't control. If a student opts to go to a magnet school or a tech school, or we have an outplacement or an expulsion, we need to provide them transportation. We don't have a choice. So that number can fluctuate greatly. Tuition includes unanticipated special ed placement for 23-24. So we do anticipate we don't anticipate, but it does include a placement for 23-24. Includes tuition costs for the career pathways and independent study. And you'll hear more about that later. Includes anticipated 3% increase for all special education outplacements. And that could be 3% or more. Accounts for students aging out of the magnet school tuition program. So we did look at what students will be aging out and it won't be that are paying for next year, but we don't know who may opt into a magnet school also. So it still is a little bit of a moving target, but it's at 8.08%. To say that you have supplies, textbooks, and materials, an increase of only $18,245 for the whole district at 1.8%, I would consider that very modest. With the exception of supplies needed for career pathways, all buildings departments are taking 0% increase, which I already shared with you. Principals and department leaders have redistributed funds. That's why I said within their budget, they may have moved lines, but the overall totality has not increased. And again, same comment as before, with the rising cost of inflation, a 0% increase is really a decrease. Equipment, with the exception of supplies needed for career pathways program, all buildings and departments are taking 0. Rise cost, and the same thing. So we know for the career pathways program, which we had a staff member last year for, and we're still looking at like the CNA program and having students out for internships. We need to support that program. We brought a staff member on, so there is an increase for that program. To ask them to have a 0% increase and then find the funds for this, we feel is unreasonable. All other expenditures. This is the $100,000 that is for the classroom reconfiguration for the CNA course and the supplies needed for that classroom. And the thought is, by offering the course on-site during the school day, it'll increase access for students. So the thought is if it's part of their normal course load, it's not that they have to do it on a Saturday morning or their parents have to drive them, it'll happen just within the school day. But that's the increase on all their expenditures. I put this slide up because I know that oftentimes we say, well, population is going down or student population is going down, and why isn't the staffing going down? This just shows where those 5 staff members are being eliminated for next year. So there are 5 staff members less in the Berlin Public Schools for next year based on this. There's actually 6, but we potentially could be hiring a teacher for the elementary. Hartford open choice enrollment. I bring up this slide because to make the board aware as well as the public, the funds that we receive per student, we were at 4% for 4 years. This year, with the number of families that moved out of Hartford or chose to just withdraw their students, we fell below 4% for the first time in 5 years to 3.61. What that means is that our reimbursement rate drops from $8,000 per student to $6,000 per student for this current year, which roughly is a $240,000 decrease to our funding. That's for our present school year. So we know that we have 7 students that will be graduating from the high school from the choice program, bringing us to 89 students for next year. If no students elect to leave Hartford, move out of Hartford, or leave the choice program, we'd have 89 students. So essentially, we're asking for another 21 students to move to 110 students. Those students would be at the K and first grade level. Personally, in our budget, we anticipate being at 3% again, even though I set this at 4.21. And the reason why is I do not believe that we're gonna have 21 students that are gonna wanna, or more, which could be 30 students, with students that leave the program, that are gonna want to come into the Berlin Public Schools. This year, there were not enough choice students to fill the seats we offered, and I think that trend's gonna continue. It's not just here in Berlin, it's in many of the districts, especially the districts that are further away from Hartford, for the transportation reasons. But I did put budget at 3%. If for some reason we were able to get 4%, that would be fantastic. But we're not gonna go, and my recommendation to you later on with the number, and you can change that at that point, say stay at 3, move to 4. My recommendation when we bring this forward will be that we only accept at K and 1, unless they're siblings as we've been in the past, just because the success of those students is much greater when we're accepting at the lower levels, you know, not just accepting them throughout the grade spans. A little bit about the numbers of open choice. I draw your attention to the open choice balance prior year with a $300,000 carryover this year, so $300,000 in choice. This year, we need to hold on to that $300,000 till next year, which we can roll over to choice money, because we need it to fund all of the positions that are listed here. Without holding on to that $300,000, we would have to take greater cuts, staffing cuts in the budget to maintain, because that $300,000 really represents that 4% almost that we talked about that we're not at. So to say right now, oh, we're gonna be at 4% and we're gonna hit that million, that may not take place. So we'll need to hold on to that 300,000. If we didn't hold on to the 300,000 and we stayed at 3%, we would have a major deficit there. And you can see where the positions are funded. You can see the 23 to the 24. If you go down the 24 column, you can see the differences, the increases. And then you go down to where it says special education outplacements. We're holding in there 187,000. We know that special ed potentially has 2 outplacements right now that could eat up that money, because that's that 300,000 that we have right now. We don't have other monies put aside for outplacements at this time. So that just gives you an understanding of where the choice money is spent. It's really spent on staff, certified and non-certified. Just a trend line of where the budgets have been, looking back, back in 13-14, 3.0%, and then, 3 years of above 3, and last year at 2.5. And then, where things have come in, 5.96 requests, 5.3, and then this year 4.87. It just gives you a snapshot of where things have been in history. This chart, to me, is something we've had for many years, and I think it tells a great story. These are towns that we're all aware of, oftentimes Berlin is compared to. It's a 5-year look back of where the budget is. So if you look back to, 18, 19, at 1.3, we definitely were the lowest, the lowest budget that was received. And then the 3.21, things got better, 3.2, 3.17, then 2.5. If you look at the 2.5 from last year, that were accepted by those towns, we were 0.04% above Newington at 2.46. So we were right down to where we are. If you look at where we are now, we're at 2.68. It's listed in, a descending order there, so you can see 2.68 is just before the Glastonbury at 2.49. And we're looking at 5-year averages there. So. Oftentimes it's talked about our per pupil, current expenditure per pupil. We are right in the middle for our DIRG for what we spend per pupil. This takes a look at over time. I think a line graph is great to show a trend. Back in the 11, 12, we were real close to the state average. When we got the 1%, you can see where the 1% is where we widened out. And now we're pulling closer to it, or we have pulled closer to it, as it's also a relationship between what Berlin's doing as well as the state. So the state pulled down a little and we pulled up last year, even at the 2.5. Important to note, other monies that are outside the operational budget, where are they and what are they being spent for and how much are we getting? What you see in red, and it's only for the last 3 years, are the federal grants that we received. So you look at our trend, 900, I want you to go down to the bottom portion, 17, 18, 938,990. Then 837, so we lost almost 100,000. And then we went up 40,000. Then it looks like, oh, you got $1.4 million. But it really wasn't, it wouldn't have been $1.4 million without the ESSER one and without the CRF. So we really got 840. The next year, it's 900,000 without the ESSER 2 and the ARP. And then the last year, this current year, it's 826 without the ESSER 2 and the ARP. So the federal funds really are decreasing. To my knowledge, there's nothing being said that the ESSER funds are coming back and there's more federal grants that are coming in the same way that they've come in the past. The only thing that's being talked about is the educational cost sharing. There's a new formula with the state. The state, their claim is that by 2028, they'll be fully implemented. But I can say for Berlin, looking at the plan for the educational cost sharing, even when it's fully implemented, Berlin will receive an extra $240,000. Other towns that are alliance districts and things will receive much greater funding when it comes to educational cost sharing. They'll receive, a town such as East Hartford, $8 million more. So I just put it in perspective. Even fully funded, right now we're supposed to be funded at 73%, and many years have been funded at 70. Even full implementation is what they're pushing for at the state level. It's not going to make a drastic, yes, it's a couple $100,000, not going to make a drastic impact to Berlin's budget. So, and then the state grants, very similar. The state grants, you can see, quick view, I'll just point out the bar graph, the various state grants that we received, definitely a reduction in the last, you can see going down every year a little bit, going down 100, 150,000, so. In the last couple of slides here, projected enrollment. So if you look at the schools and the projected enrollment, we are projected to lose 46 students next year in totality to the Berlin Public Schools. But I can share with you that last year we were projected to lose, I think it was 38 students. We didn't lose nearly that student, so it's projection. It's not an exact science, but this is what's projected. So you can see at Griswold it's net 11, at Hubbard it's net 10, and at Willard it's net 4 change. And all it takes is people moving to town. That could change and swing very quickly 10 to 12 either way. And at the secondary level, we look at it by grade level. So McGee gains 5, and the high school loses 28. So someone might say on the outside looking in, saying you're down 46 students. That should be 2 teachers. looking at it through that lens, yes, it could be two teachers, but they're not in one grade level, they're not in one school, it's not as easy as just a one-to-one correspondence of number of students divided by how many teachers that would be, and then you make those cuts. And the reality is, we are cutting 2 staff members, 2 teachers next year. Not because of that, not with that rationale, but that's how it can be looked at. So, in closing, the school district budget reflects the commitment of the community to invest in the future of our children. Without adequate budgeting, with changing what's offered, changing class sizes, we impact the future of our children, and what previous children have had in their experience. The erosion of funding of education challenges the sustainability of Berlin to be a competitive school district with rich educational and co-curricular opportunities for our students. As you can see in this present budget, we did cut positions. We did not touch any co-curricular activities. Sports, arts, number of electives, number of specials at the elementary school, none of that's been touched. And going back to the goals of the budget is to preserve all of that to the greatest extent that we can. You can look at the back, there's questions, but there's a bunch of appendices. I'm not gonna go through them, they're there for your reference if you have questions. If you have specific questions prior to, you're welcome to ask them now. If you have questions prior to the next board meeting and you wanted to either email them to me, I can prepare the answers for you.
Shouldn't they all come through me by a certain date?
That'd be fine. If you wanna do that, that's
Good.
more organized.
What date do you want? Do you want Monday the 16th, so you have a week to prepare?
That's
it?
fine.
Okay, so all questions, you can send them through me, so they're just going through one place. And then I can just make sure everyone's getting the same responses. Get that by Monday the 16th, I'll send out an email reminder.
If there's questions that you have right now, I'd gladly try to answer them for you.
I have a couple.
Sure.
For the ESSER grants, is it already set in stone that there's no chance of getting any of that for next year? I thought it wasn't, that they still were kind of.
There's no additional funding that's coming.
Mhm.
We could reallocate funding possibly. Right now, we're allocated,
Okay.
but we might be able to reallocate it for next year, yes.
Okay.
You can reallocate, but there's not new funding.
Okay. Next question.
Sure.
This is about the staff that we're
Let me
looking.
go back to that slide, so that everyone can see it.
All right, so the staff that we're looking to get rid of. I'm really struggling with getting rid of the lead teacher at McGee, just for social emotional. Do we have lead teachers at Willard, Hubbard, and Griswold?
We have a lead teacher at Willard and Griswold.
Okay.
The reason for that is not something that we wanted to reduce.
Mhm.
But we looked at other middle schools of that size, number of student population, to have 3, even though lead teacher's a lead teacher,
Mhm.
administrative role, that's not something that many of them have. It's not that we don't feel that it's not effective, because I think it is. It's not that I don't feel that it's not, doesn't add to the school, because we do. So it's not that we'd like to have that there, we wouldn't. But my position was, is the board, are we in a position with this type of budget to support having 3 administrators at a middle school of that size? And if we are, then I'm all for it. We'll have to find the money elsewhere. But that's why it was there.
I'm just thinking of the history of this current school year that we're in, and where the kids are in elementary, and then especially in middle school. We have how many kids at the middle school? 7?
No,
Eight.
little under 600.
Okay. So just because I'm more knowledgeable of the middle
Sure.
school, and the issues that really it's, because Tim and I, talk, and every time I'm talking to Tim, he's dealing with something. Abby's already, always dealing with something. So my concern is what is the plan then for these kids who are having these emotional and, they're going through puberty as well. Middle school, as we well know, is a very difficult transition. We're still trying to recover, and will take years to recover from COVID. So what would the plan be for discipline measures and doing what the 3 of them do? Is it Sal taking more of a integral part, I'm just trying to think of what would happen, because then we have the ESS program at McGee, correct?
Right, but that's only gonna service a limited population.
Exactly.
Right.
So I'm thinking of all of the positions. I mean, I don't love getting rid of the 5, but this one in particular. And then I'm looking up here at this reading teacher at McGee who makes $103,000, and we're going to move that. That was, funded by a grant. We're going to move that over to the, I think you said operational. So I look at that and I'm like, all right, a reading teacher. Not that it's not necessary by any means, but because of just the need of where our kids are, I'm almost like, I don't know. That's just my own personal thought. I'm just really, that one I struggle with, because we had to fight so hard a couple years ago after getting rid of the VP position over there, and then putting one in. I couldn't imagine functioning without. And we had talked about that. We had talked about it as a board, the difficulty of that particular program, the school functioning without that extra support. I mean, that's just my thought. So, but that's on that. I don't know what anyone else's thought are, but that one I'm struggling with. Another question for you.
Yes.
Or really a comment. The kids that we expect, or we're expecting less next year, the housing development on Deming Road behind Home Depot will be done in a couple months. So there's no way we're gonna have, 46 less. No. That's gonna be similar to a Fieldstone Crossing, so no way. Then we have the housing development that's going, right by, Acura. That will also be done in the next couple months. That also will have children coming. Yes, and then we have Farmington Ave. So if anything, I will be shocked if we don't have an increase. We just don't know.
Right.
So-
We received 2 reports, one from NEASC and one from Prada. They're both anticipating, one was 44 and one was 46, decrease in students. Doesn't mean they're accurate. I said to you, this current year,
Yeah, I know.
they weren't accurate.
No.
And there is more of a transient population right now, people moving, so it's not as though, and we know we have those developments. So they look at birth rates and things, and I can give more information on how they look at it. They're not always accurate.
Tracy said a development's going in over by her too.
There's something going on.
Yeah. I just am thinking, so with the increase of the population, because it will, I will be honestly shocked. I feel like with the way that our staff is situated or whatnot, and again, I'm only one person, I'm a social worker, so obviously I'm coming from that perspective. But because of just, and I think you guys have all seen it with the social emotion, I mean,
Yes.
oh my goodness. So I'm just looking at the, how we're looking at the staff and what we're changing, what we're not. I just really want to make sure that we're doing it in a responsible and, which I'm not saying you're not, that's not what I'm saying, but just, I'm like, it's just giving me agina, that we're really making sure that all of our kids are really getting that extra service, or just what we're offering now as far as the mental health part is just really, it really worries me. The McGee thing is really just bothering me. Okay, and one last thing. These are just my comments. Okay, here's my last question. And this has taken me, I think, forever how long I've been on the board to finally ask this question. When we're looking at the percentages, and I think you kind of already said that, but this is being me very basic. When you're saying, 3 to 7%, we go on we move towards the 7. We always go towards, when we're budgeting towards the top of what we think the percentage will be in all of our categories.
No, that's not,
Okay.
Ashley tried
I'm glad
this.
I'm asking.
No,
I know
so
she was
like,
trying to explain it, that's
When
why.
she said the 4 to 7, it's a range. So Ashley didn't just take 7% and tack it on there. You said it was an average going through.
Yeah, it's based on whatever increase we've gotten from that particular contract.
All right, so you're going like individually based on the contracts that you were looking at from this year to next year. For the medical and whatnot, we always go for the 10%. That could be high, it could be right on. We just don't know.
The town gives it to us.
Yes, well,
That's what
exactly.
we're told by Kevin at the town to say 10%. And then Ashley worked it out overall at the 10%, given the other pieces that we can be at 7 point something. And say that 10% comes in at 8, But then what typically happens, the town comes back and says, well, that was only an 8, so then that, you can decrease the budget
Gotcha,
by that.
okay. And then for the increase of utilities, which I get, it's going to obviously increase. But it could potentially not be an increase of 20%, right? It could be maybe a little less than that.
Could be more.
Could be more, but I'm just saying, I'm literally
could
just
be.
playing devil's
It
advocate
could,
here.
because if this, we base it on this year's projection with some increase,
Yeah,
it could be, this year's projection could be off, and the next year's could be off.
exactly.
But it's, and I'm gonna say it's absolutely best guesstimate based on the current trend and where things are going. Like, so you know, like I said, I know the bill for personally this month is doubled with if you have, Eversource as your power supplier.
Yeah, well, exactly.
So,
Okay. That was just kind of just a general question. And then, the supplies, for the Career Pathways Program, which you have the new individual who started last year.
no, yes.
Yes. So I know you said there's no equipment increase except with the exception of supplies needed for the Career Pathways Program. What kind of, like, what kind of supplies are you, because I'm looking at, you know, what the costs are for, it would, so what kind of supplies are we?
I'm gonna wait till Eileen gives the
All right, so
presentation.
Eileen will tell us about that.
Eileen doesn't have much to share, but she
That's
can
fine,
tell-
I just,
No offense to you, Eileen, but there's not much.
I'm just looking at the increase, so it's gotta be something,
I'm
so.
gonna let her give a detail about that.
All right,
so.
those are just my initial thoughts on this. Thank you.
Any other initial
Thank you for
questions or
listening.
thoughts? We'll
I-
go Matt. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
you said that in the choice grant, we've got $187,000 set aside for unanticipated tuitions.
Correct.
And we don't have anything in the special education budget to cover that.
We don't have,
You don't have a placeholder.
no placeholder. The placeholder will be the choice.
Okay, but your document here says that we have two
Two
unanticipated tuitions.
Unanticipated for next year.
We don't have anything for this year.
Well, this year's almost over. I'm talking about next year. This budget's next year.
We have two that are,
in the hot,
that happen next year that are.
So
going
you
to-
got,
We have
so
two-
what we have is we have two
We
unanticipated
have
tuition
two-
placeholders
right.
in special education for next year and $187,000
No,
set
right,
aside
but
for
the two placeholders for next year we have in the operational, I know you're gonna say, oh, you doubled down on them, I didn't. Those two are already slated that Linda anticipates they're going next year, so I'm not even saying they're placeholders, I know how
So
it
they're not
reads.
unanticipated, there's
Well,
somebody that we know
well,
is already.
Expected.
They're expected, I guess is a better way to put my,
Well, you'll see in my presentation, when I prepared this budget, they were unanticipated. As of last week, now
That's
I
two
have
months.
some money in there. So,
Two?
actually, the one is $155,000.
Okay.
So
It's
I-
just because,
no, I
right,
knew-
so you
I
went
knew
through this thing and
someone-
I'm like, wait, well, hold on a minute.
No, no.
I just saw on this other page that we have it in there. Second question, and you're probably gonna answer this, Linda, so, is when you talk about transportation, you're offsetting some of the transportation costs with money from excess cost.
especially, yes.
Are we also offsetting special education tuitions with excess cost as well? Because it wasn't noted that way, so I was just curious. Because we noted it for transportation, and that's why we could lower the rate. Right, so it gets gray for me when I,
No, it's gonna
Okay.
be, it's a majority of the excess cost grant, or reimbursement goes towards,
yeah,
The
it's
offset
like
of
85%,
Yeah, that's
15%, or,
that's
I use
typically what it is,
exactly the
yeah,
same
you're right,
model, I
guess it's
stole
better.
it from you. So,
Right, but another piece on the transportation, one of the bigger cost savings is actually, we're not running to as many tech schools. That's where our more significant cost savings is,
okay,
moving forward.
perfect.
Is that it? Matt, from Matt, is that it
Yep.
from you? Okay. Tracy?
Well, but we'll wait.
Just a question, which I looked at, I didn't see it, but I could be wrong. Just a question. First, Jamie, I have to say that I wrote down exactly what you said earlier, so I kind of had that question on the lead teacher at McGee. So Griswold, and I know you touched on it, kindergarten, it looks like we've got a lot more kids than we do the other ones. Looks like it could open up if you kind of take the numbers, you could make another classroom out of it. So as of right now, I'm just curious, do you know how many paras do they have for kindergarten at Grit? Like, do they have that?
They
Because it
share, they don't have individual, they share a pair like they've always had.
one for 5 classrooms?
No,
Oh, okay.
is it, It's two
There's
and a
two?
half.
Okay,
Yeah,
oh, I
because
guess I
what
should
happened
ask
is
you. I'm
when
sorry.
when we put the paras in, they weren't for each classroom, they were shared amongst two
Right,
classrooms.
okay.
We never expanded to go a para for each classroom.
Would it be beneficial to possibly, and save costs, have more?
Well, they would love to have a full-time para in their classroom, there's not a question.
But you need to have the teacher.
Right, but the question is, I don't think that, and I didn't, not, you have to talk to the principals, I haven't talked about it, but I don't think that they would, I think they'd rather have a staff member and make the classes smaller than
Sure,
to add the
but
para.
I didn't know, like, if
That would make it
possible, if
possible.
it's could take a Band-Aid
Well,
approach.
if we
that
have,
was
if we have to
all
have
I
large
meant.
classes like that, then offering a full-time para would definitely be a hybrid in between. But you know, if we can, I think adding the teacher and getting class sizes to a point that we've had them at for a number of years is the preferred method.
That was, I just
Yeah,
had
that's
that question,
good, so
and I
that's a
agree
good
with
question.
what Jamie said.
Any other questions before we move on to the next part? Gary?
Sorry, Carrie.
No, go ahead.
The reading teacher coming out of ESSERS and into the thing, when was that teacher brought on?
I gotta see which teacher it is. That was, the reading
Brought on.
teacher brought
When were they
into ESSER,
brought
I
on,
don't remember.
on
I
board?
don't-
Was
was
that a
that-
hire with ESSERS?
Oh, no, this is.
No,
Or is
Prior.
it someone you moved
It was
into
prior.
a support position?
We were told to bring them into
And
ESSER.
somebody else, so if that person moves into the operating budget, and we're not gonna support that position, I'm not saying that that's what we're saying, I'm just gonna ask, someone else of a lesser salary would actually lose their job through a bumping process, I'm assuming?
So, yes, but, what I did was, I took all of the reading teachers, all of those reading positions, and they're all top step.
Most of them have they have to have a 6-year degree,
So
and they've had their
that-
years.
Teachers, so they
So
still
they might
bump
bump
teachers.
somebody else, so yeah, it could be.
But that amount is the amount that we're talking about. Okay.
Carrie?
No, I'm just thinking about, this is more of a question, I guess, maybe for Jamie. But because Jamie, you obviously you're speaking passionately about, the middle school and based on your experiences therein. And certainly I think we can all acknowledge that, social, emotional, psychological challenges kind of peak for kids during those years. So for me, it's less about, I'm gonna confess, I don't know who the lead teacher is there. I don't know what his or her role is, but it sounds like there's a lot of social emotional support, that is offered by a lead teacher. Okay.
That's not what I meant, I'm sorry.
Okay, so tell me what you meant.
I think with what I've seen with them is, yes, of course, that's, I think, the demands of the kids are more social emotional, but the behavioral components that need to be addressed because of post-COVID behavior, they're really functioning at a much less mature place than what they were before COVID. So the discipline that I see Tim doing just alone, this isn't even what Abby's doing, Abby's right next to Tim, that's the lead teacher. So just the magnitude of them dealing with those issues, and that's not even going into the classrooms for the, doing your, thank you, yeah. It's, so, just the focus, I mean, Tim's running down the road after a kid because they're leaving the grounds, and so I feel like the discipline, which we know is much more extensive at the middle school than obviously at the elementary, and then thankfully Eileen and Katie and Barb have a, different process at the high school. So I feel like just the physicality of having someone there because of the issues coming in, maybe it's because of the social emotional component, maybe it's because they're behind academically, maybe it's because the teachers just need that extra support with doing the, I just feel like there's a whole, what I'm saying?
Yeah. I
It's
think-
not just the social emotion, I think that's part of it though.
I think, this isn't a budget issue for me, what you're talking about. And the lead teacher role probably has a great deal of value, separate from the reactive and necessarily reactive responsive, I guessness, to behavioral issues. But that to me seems like maybe board, we ought to be thinking about investing in more comprehensive school counselors so that we take more of a preventative approach. And we're not having our administrators chase people out of the building because they're, bleeding out emotionally.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure that's not what you want to be doing every day.
If I could just make a statement, and I know Abby's here about the lead teacher. The lead teacher is on this list because in the past, the board has looked at positions and said, how does it compare to other districts?
Yeah.
Okay, that is the sole reason why the lead teacher's on this list and not something else. If the board is okay saying that we're all right being different than most middle schools and having a third administrator and we feel it's necessary, I support the lead teacher 100%. I know what Abby does, I know how much discipline is there, but the position of looking at it saying for a student population of that size, typically you don't have three, you don't have the lead teacher. The role is more administrative than not, and that's something to talk about with the board at a later date about moving them into because the teachers union would like them out of the teachers group. But that, besides that, but that was the sole rationale of putting it here, is looking at it from a lens of, okay, when someone compares and says, well, other schools operate with that, why do we have X and they have something minus? So
And
as far as how busy the administration is there and what they're doing with the students, I support everything you said, Jamie, but I just wanna make sure it's clear with the board why that position's on here.
Yeah.
That's the sole
I
reason.
think when you look at several years ago, when McGee was really struggling and we had these discussions about the discipline that was happening and some of the suspensions especially, it was concerning. And then with the changes that the three of them made, it's not like that right now. They're actually kind of almost ahead of the game, if you will. I wouldn't say necessarily ahead, but they're in a position where they're able to focus on what needs to be focused on. And especially with the transition up to the high school, I feel like then it just, for the staff, for coming up to Eileen in high school, it just seems like a better transition because the issues that we were facing 3-4 years ago, and this is before COVID, are nowhere near what they are now because of the changes that they've made. So yes, personally, I want you 100% to take that off the list, but that's
So,
me.
I think we've brought up really good points about this, and I think everyone needs to, from now until the 23rd, really think about what has been presented, what we see here, where you are personally with this, and then the board can talk, because the 23rd is our meeting for us to say, we want to add this back in, or no, we want to cut this out, or we want to reduce further, or that's going to be our opportunity. So I think that's, all valid points, all really good discussion, but I just want to put that out there.
I just want to say one more thing, and that is, to Brian's point, I think it is completely appropriate and professional when looking at a budget to make comparisons as you did. And I think it's really important to, it's easier said than done, and now I feel bad because now I know who the head teacher is, and I'm about to say this, but to sort of depersonalize it, sort of like where Matt started with respect to, there are lots of wonderful people doing wonderful things who deserve to be in the roles that they are or to be acknowledged and so forth. But I think it is incredibly important, and it is unfortunately part of our role to make the comparisons that you have done for us, in this case, Brian, with respect to that particular position or many of the other things, as comparisons with other comparable school districts. I think what becomes difficult for all of us is as we the degree to which we can sort of provide testimony for the contributions of people within our school district influences our perspective, and it's really hard to unknow the things that we know about the good contributions that individuals in various positions make. So,
But to your
we have
point,
to
I
set
think
that.
it shows that Brian has put together as fiscally responsible of a budget as he is able to bring to the board. And, it sparks controversy and debate and strong opinions, and I think that's good because it shows that, he's making difficult choices and we're not just creating a wish list and throwing it out there and seeing what the board approves. So,
Can I just make a last comment?
Last
to Karen's
comment.
point? I actually don't really know Abby, to be quite honest. I know Tim and Sal. It's honestly, it's the position. I'm sure Abby is absolutely, I've met her a couple times. I'm sure she's lovely.
a lot of airtime.
But it's the,
I know.
it's
Most
the,
popular
honestly,
person,
for
yeah.
me, it's the position. Again, Abby's lovely, I'm sure, but for me, it's the position. Just because I've seen what the position has done for that particular school, but we'll talk about it. on the
Yeah, but I
23rd,
think
so.
you've really given us a lot to think about and consider as we go into our next workshop. Like, I think this is an important discussion that does need to continue.
Just my last comment.
Last comment.
This is nothing about Abby's performance. Abby is wonderful, and she does a great job at McGee, so
It
not
really
to,
stinks that we're
not,
talking
not
about
to
I know,
embarrass
sorry,
you.
Abby.
Sarah, we apologize.
Everybody
It's
in the whole
terrible.
town
So-
knows that.
Anyone else have any other last comments? Ian, Sam?
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to the
Right.
next.
Before you begin the next part, this is definitely a different format than in years past. I think that the board will appreciate the format, at least I hope you do. It is one presentation with various administrators giving their presentation, and it's definitely abridged, because there's not a lot of items in the budget. So, with that, I'm gonna
And that's why we were able to reduce 2 meetings this week down to 1. This is this one. This cough is killing me. This cough is.
Greetings.
Yes.
We appreciate your attention. It probably took us longer to walk up here than to say what we need to say for our portion.
Well, thank you for coming.
So if we're not, apologize for the redundancy, but we'll be as efficient as possible. As you see for the elementary school budget, you've heard our operational budget request is at a 0%. We've been multiple years at 0, based on the context of inflation. You look at the increased fuel and shipping costs, we're operating at a decrease within that context. As far as staffing, you're gonna see that 1.0 FTE classroom teacher for the sole purpose of just that class size, doing the best we can at the elementary level to keep that primary class size around 20. That is it in a nutshell.
Do you think 20 is too big for lower grades? Any
You have
grades?
to start paying attention, I would say. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that, and I'll let my colleagues speak as well, there's a reason why that FTE is saying that number 20 is there. There's definitely a difference, K to 2 than 3 to 5 with the numbers, and you can see an impact. That is definitely, I'll say it's correlated to the number of kids in the class and the ratio with the teacher. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Very well put together. You did a great job.
Nice job, you guys.
Very.
I told you it's a little different format today.
So, yeah.
Can you just really quick speak a little bit more to what, like, any of you might anticipate the long-term impacts of increasing class sizes
Sure.
can be?
I'll turn that over to.
Yeah, so right now in kindergarten, our numbers are pretty big. We actually got another enrollment today. So we're close to 20 in kindergarten as it is. I have 4 classes of 19 and 1 at 18. Next year, we will be at 24 students to a grade level. First grade, second grade, I would argue, is probably the most critical of all of them, no offense, but it's the foundation. They are learning how to read. When teachers cannot pull kids into small groups or one-on-one to really progress monitor, it is going to have a devastating effect as they get older, going into the middle school and to the high school. So I really do feel it's a very strong commitment that the district would make by increasing that to lower enrollment, or class sizes.
Yeah, it's important, absolutely. There's a huge difference. To John's point, we have our first grade right now around 18, and our second grades are around 23, 24. We got 4 new students in last week, so our enrollment continues to increase. We're seeing a surge in EL students coming in, so they require additional support. So as we're working hard to close achievement gaps, we're meeting a wide array of needs. So it is very important to keep those class sizes low, especially in the primary grades.
Thank you so much.
I think what you're hearing is about quality of service. And if you start losing and there's not much to cut, when you start taking away, it absolutely impacts somewhere. And that FTE will definitely have an impact.
Thank you so much. Thank you for explaining that. I wanted to make it worth your time.
Worth the walk.
You can have both secondary come up.
Both secondary, you can come up.
Eileen and Sally both can come up.
You can come on up together. Look at Sal's.
So thank you for having us again. It's the same at McGee. We're looking at $0 in the operational budget. Will be, I believe it's year 4 of $0. So again, the increased labor, material, shipping rates. So it's really is a decrease in operational. We've requested to keep all of our positions, but that's not, as you heard earlier, that's not on the docket right now. I can say we're not chasing kids down the street. Leadership works to prevent us from chasing students down the street.
There's just that one particular child.
Yes, we would certainly like to keep all positions we have, but we have made 0 requests for new positions.
So, I will break the trend. There is a little bit of an increase at the high school of just under 17%, and you can see the dollar amount there. The majority of that increase is to support our Career Pathway Initiative. If you recall, we brought in a new position this year with Millie Hemming, our Work-Based Learning Experience Coordinator, and she came in this year with literally no budget. So we've been really trying to find a variety of funds in a variety of places, and as her work continues to ramp up, she needs a budget with which to operate, and that would include field experiences, which requires transportation, as well as instructional materials that include certifications for students and the like. Anytime you want to have students earn industry credentials, it comes with certification, and there's a cost to those things. So we also, the new CNA course, the Certified Nursing Assistant course, was approved as part of our program studies, and we were trying to move it, we're attempting to move it from co-curricular to part of our course of studies. We are looking to retrofit a room, so that was part of that large number that you saw earlier in the superintendent's budget. It may come in a little bit less, but they wanted to make sure that we are able to outfit the room appropriately, and it does need supplies such as hospital beds and the like. There's a requirement in terms of how the room can be set up. The other thing too is if we retrofit the room appropriately, it is a room that could be used at night in order to not only service our students during the day, but there could potentially be an opportunity to work with community members that want to come in the evening and be certified as well at our facility. So that's just a benefit to the community as well. We do also have some materials for our emergency medical services and our firefighting course. There was a lot of learning with the emergency medical services as we were bringing our new instructors on in terms of things that we needed. We were able to use some year-end dollars last year in order to upfront some things, but there are some yearly costs that go along with that, including testing fees, online subscriptions, and so forth. The note I'd like to make about textbooks is that for the last several years, textbooks were a part of the curriculum and instruction budget. To be consistent with the other buildings, the textbooks other than new programming was brought back into the operating budget, so that accounts for over $15,000. At the high school, we have online subscriptions. For example, World Language, all of the online subscriptions are up next year, so they have to be resubscribed to. We have replacement text. There are times where we also have to update text for particular courses that are aligned with UConn and other early college programs, yearly codes that align with, that's when you move to using online textbooks in some cases. So there is a cost associated with that. There is that increase of graduation costs. We were able to offset that a little bit, but I do want to let you know all other areas are at 0, or in many areas, more than 50% of our areas are at less than 0% to offset some of the costs associated with this.
I think the career pathways is important because it keeps students in the district and reduces interest in the, educational choice programs like the magnet schools. But one question, can any of those costs be covered through Perkins, the Perkins grant?
We actually did put in for some of the equipment for CNA through Perkins, so there is a possibility that we may be able to reduce a little bit. We did get some approval, and we're looking to see if we're able to move some other, a little bit more forward as well. But it's not as much as you would.
Yeah, no, I know, it's not a lot, and the numbers already come back, right?
But we
So-
were able to put some in, and this was obviously after initially we put this in, but there, again, there's other materials, so that is a little, that target is moving just a little bit as we can, get some of that funding.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I was just gonna ask, for those that, weren't present for when you covered the increased graduation costs, can you just provide a thumbnail sketch recap?
So the increased graduation cost for having it at Sage, it will run somewhere between, we're estimating between $5,000 and $6,000. Keep in mind with the cost of inflation, I mean, that's built into that $5,000 to $6,000. So, we've worked to, I've withheld some funds this year in order to be able to offset that cost. But again, I wanted to be, when we were preparing the budget, it was before we made a decision to go to Sage, I wanted to make sure that we were going to be properly funded moving forward in years in the future, because other accounts are shrinking where I might be able to offset some of those costs, and as those funds shrink, I have to, something like graduation has to happen, and it needs to happen in a certain manner, and there are just some accounts you can't shortchange.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Okay, moving on to curriculum and instruction budget.
So our curriculum and instruction budget is sometimes a bit of a mystery, I think, for some of you who haven't been on the board for a while. So we just wanted to talk a little bit about what gets funded through the curriculum and
Thanks
instruction
for some of it that have been on for a while too.
So anything that has to do with curriculum additions, revisions, and updates has to get funded through the curriculum office, right? So if we change a course, if we're updating a curriculum, if we're adding a new course at the high school, we have to fund for the writing of the course as well as the materials that go into the new course. Any new state mandates that come our way, which become more and more every year, we have to be able to provide the learning and the materials. So, for example, Mr. Benedict talked about the paraprofessional learning. That is funded through the curriculum budget. So, next year we anticipate that we have more, we're gonna have some reading needs based on the expectations of the state, and so that's going to come out of the curriculum office. And then for, as Amy mentioned, the new courses that we offer, so we'll have to purchase new materials for new courses, textbooks for new courses, professional learning for all staff, in district and out of district. So when we have consultants come in to work with us, that gets paid through the curriculum office. When we, send teachers out for specific trainings, that gets paid through the curriculum office. And then the software subscriptions for teaching and learning, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, were all moved to the, curriculum office. So that's because we can save money when we purchase for 3 elementary schools instead of each elementary school ordering their own, subscription. So when we take a look at the individual pieces, instructional supplies, we have items in there that include materials for a new elementary classroom. And it's really not a lot of money that's actually in for this, because the principal was able to go down, find other materials, find other, desks and chairs and everything that was already in the building, so we didn't include that. Meg, I believe, said that we have more ESOL teachers, so even though we have Title III money, we also have, I'm sorry, students, we also have more needs. We're getting more level 1 students, which are the students who come in without English, coming in, so we've had to supplement that as well, and to be able to give more resources to support those students. Classroom support materials, as I mentioned, we have some state legislation that will impact that as well in the area of reading. In other certified salaries, that's for curriculum writing. It's for teachers as leaders of professional development, so we want teachers to lead professional development, and we pay them for their planning for that. Next year, we have new social studies standards coming out, reading, and then we have consistent updates that happen at the elementary level in math and literacy based on results of testing and concerns that teachers may have related to pacing. And right now, we have some math materials that we're looking at to replace some of the outdated materials that we have right now. And then teaching and learning software is always a tricky one because, not only because of the increase in price, but we have, sometimes we have multiple year contracts because we'll get significant discounts. And so this year may not be a year that we have a lot of renewals, but next year, next budget year, there may be more renewals. So that's why you might see it, this year it's around 79,000, but moving forward, it might be even higher than that, and then the next year might be lower. So it kind of perspective, I know, right? It's a lot of money, but it's, you know, when you look at the databases that the school libraries have, it's really wonderful resources for our students.
Okay, continuing on, in-district professional development, we do offer a lot in district, and that will include potentially next year some reading professional development related to our new state legislation. As Lori mentioned, we have some outdated math materials in elementary, and so we are working on piloting some things there and working with teachers and getting some training related to that. We are currently working with the CTE consultant as we develop our career pathways. So Steve Rothenberg is working with us. He will actually be with us to present at our February meeting to share a little bit about the work that we're doing. And we also, of course, work with consultants with other departments. For example, we are doing some work around world language in the district. As they've updated standards, we work with Heidi Hughes-Jacobs, people like that. Out of district PD, we have certain things that we do send our professional staff to. There are some people who generally attend things outside of districts, such as our librarians, teacher leaders, certain department professional development on PD days and other days for our music, PE, and art. And of course, we have our AP training with Taft that occurs. Staff travel, so if we have staff who are shared between buildings and need to travel on a regular basis, we do have to pay the transportation, and the rate for that is set for us. And we also have people who do attend PD outside of district, and mileage is paid for that as well. Non-instructional supplies is part of our budget, not a very large amount, but those are things that we need to purchase for different meetings and trainings. It includes a number of materials, chart paper, markers, a variety of things there. Our admin supplies for curriculum and instruction are materials we purchase related to professional learning and curriculum updates. Often those are books and other resources to support learning. Again, not everybody each press slide on that. And our final slide, we have several additional things. We have textbooks, as Eileen mentioned. The majority of textbooks are paid for through our account. Any new courses that we have, so for instance, this coming year, we have the new Intro to Business Law that we're partnering with Southern to have. That will include a new textbook. We have updated AP text, so our AP Psychology for this coming year. And then again, with some of the new reading legislation, we have some new texts that we need to purchase for that. Tuition, this is a new line item for us. Mainly, it comes with the CNA program. There is a tuition cost for our students. That includes the instructor from Tunxus, it includes their textbook, it includes their exam that they would take to get licensed. And we also have some other independent studies that students take part in, where we might have a small number of students, such as our multivariable calc. This year we have 3 students who are doing that, and we have a teacher who mentors them and works with them, but it is an online program. Other professional services, that's really just our author visits for the 3 elementary schools. And then dues and fees across the district for professional organizations that a number of us belong to. And lastly, field trips. This is something that in our last few years was a little bit of a smaller item in our budget, because with COVID, we really were not taking a lot of field trips. So it has gone up just a little bit. That includes transition trips, busing costs. So we have our 5th to 6th grade Getting to Know You Day for all 3 elementary schools. We have our 8th to 9th grade transition, and we do pay for the transportation for that. Learning about Berlin, for example, 2nd grade, they have their Colonial Berlin and their Peck Library trip. Elementary science, we split the costs with the elementary schools to bring a science program into the schools, and that is a cost per class, and so we work together to provide that. And then we also do things like the DHS play. We bring some students up to that. And we also started a STEAM trip where some 8th grade groups of students get to go to the high school and try out some of the different things in our tech ed area. So that's a new thing we started this past year.
2 quick questions. Thank you. One is on the previous slide. So the supplies, I heard you, the admin supplies, that is, for $20,000. I heard you say it's often books. Are those books for
adults.
Administrators? So like across the district?
Not just administrators, also teachers.
Okay.
So for example, we're doing grading, we're examining our grading practices, so that people that are on the team have all of the books that, have the book that we're using as our touchstone.
And that's generally how much we're spending a year on those, on books? God, books are so good. Okay, and then on the previous slide, and for the in-district PD, how does that 83.5 break down? Is that generally what is paid for contracted, for consultants?
Overall, yes.
Okay, and those folks are following through, in other words, it's not just sort of like a come in dosing, it's a
No.
continuous, okay, so can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So, do you want to talk about CTE first?
Sure. So we are working with Steve Rothenberg, and again, he'll be in next month, so you'll be able to see a little bit about what he's doing. But he worked with us last year for a number of days. I think we had him 8 days last year, where he started work with Millie and Eileen, myself, our high school group, working to start some of the career pathways work. This year, we also have him for another, I think he started with 8 days, and we actually had to increase it to 10 based on the work we're doing to set the groundwork. So he does work where he actually comes in and meets with us, he does presentations, and he's helping us create our pathways and connect with businesses and things like that. He is also doing a number of hours on his own time, kind of putting things together for us. And you'll get to see a little bit more about that. There are other people like Heidi Hayes Jacobs, a name that I think all of you know. She's worked with us for 10 years probably, Ryan. She has done work with a number of our departments, and that's the same thing. She helped us create our entire STEAM program at the middle school. She's worked with our social studies at the high school, some different departments, but that's ongoing.
World Language is working with someone this year, so as they're looking at what world language is going to look like in years to come, they're working with someone, and they do it on multiple days. So it's not just one shot,
Yeah.
Right.
and then they leave.
Yeah,
So they come in, and then we make decisions based on some of the work that they all do together.
Sure, so just because I don't think people are familiar with this, I think it, if I'm understanding you correctly, it's basically asking consultants who are content area experts as well as guides, in terms of navigating the challenges that are presenting within district and, helping the teams to arrive at reasonable conclusions given what
Yes.
they say,
These
right?
are people who have greater expertise in these areas than we do and work with a number of districts, not just in our state, but nationwide.
I think that's an important thing. It's not just sort of the historically how we would have defined professional development. It's more of an advisory role and in that. and guiding role, right, contributing.
Brian wants to add.
I just think it's important to note that typically the consultants we work with are on a national or a bigger level than just going, say many people might reach out to a RESC and say they have an expert trained in a certain area, then work with that person. Heidi Hayes Jacobs teaches at Columbia, she's known internationally.
Sure.
The gentleman, Steve Rothenberg, was International Technology Teacher of the Year, introduced Bill Clinton. So they have a real strong background and expertise in their area. And it's never just bring someone in. Years ago, we bring someone for the name and say, okay, it's one shot and that's great.
Pray
No,
that it works.
pray it works, right. That's not typically,
Right.
and usually there's reports that they're writing or documentation. And I often, I think it's important for the board to get a chance to meet some of the consultants we're working with and hear what we're working on and the direction we're moving. But I think through this account in the past, our workshop model was funded through the curriculum office, the math program,
The
Math Studios work.
Teachers Development,
So any of
we're
those,
still working with
any of
them.
those big programs are funded through these,
No, I think that's important. When you see a number like that, I think it's important for the public to also understand how that breaks down and what it translates to in terms of the impact to our district.
And I think if we were to send people out to work with some of these people in larger groups with people from other areas, we would actually be spending more per person than when we can bring somebody in and have them work with a whole group of Berlin staff.
Right.
So that's why our in-district
And I
is a
would
lot
venture to
larger
guess
than
that would
our
be less effective, quite frankly.
Exactly. Their work with us is tailored to what we need.
Exactly.
Which is great.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just had one. So the 462,557, that's your whole budget, the whole budget. Is it a percentage increase or decrease from last year?
It's an increase, I believe, yes. Part of that comes from the fact that the tuition is now a line item that had not been. for
Right,
us. There are a
okay.
couple of areas where we had some grant funding that we'll no longer have, so things that we can apply.
Okay.
And then you don't see a line item in the superintendent's budget because yours is dispersed throughout all the items, correct?
we don't have a curriculum instruction line.
It's just added
It's-
into contracted services,
It's a bunch of different
supplies,
categories.
textbooks, yeah. Yep.
But we could, we could go back and pull last year's.
No, that's
and see,
okay. I just had a question if that was
Yeah.
total or you increased it that much, that's all. Good.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us. This is going to be the quickest budget you've ever heard from me.
No.
I kind of tried to follow Lori and Kara's format for you. So just to look at the special ed budget overall, it's close to 14 million. And again, the purpose of this budget is to really look at the learning and social emotional needs of students on individual education plans from ages 3 to 22. And what that looks at, and again, ours isn't broken out like curriculum either, so it's kind of through the entire budget with variance that it looks at. That includes the certified and non-certified salaries, instructional supplies, contracted services, equipment, tuition, transportation, the CCTA, as we talked about a few board meetings ago, and as well as extended schools year services, which is our summer school for special education students. So this really looks at the special ed budget is 26.7% compared to the overall budget. And Brian always jokes with me too, so I think it's important to say, he says, Holy Ann, come on, you gotta give something up in special ed. Special ed is in its own bubble. Special ed is all of these folks here. It's at our 5 schools as well as CCTA. So we don't operate in isolation.
And there's a lot that you wanted that you didn't get this year, so you gave, you definitely gave.
This slide just shows the current makeup of who special ed, what special ed looks like this year. So this is basically our student population, and where they receive services. So the majority of our students do receive services within our school district. We do have some students outplay, some students at magnet schools. The service plan kids are students that attend St. Paul's. And we've had 4 students that have been hospitalized this year that if they're there more than 10 days, then we have to pay for the educational services for them.
Linda, before you move on, this is probably a dumb question. Do we pay for them to attend magnet or the VOAG schools? Is there like is it a generic or does it change just based on which?
There's a base salary of all our magnet school kids, but then if they need special ed services, then it's additional.
That's
based on the services they receive.
What is it? Let's say it's
It varies.
what's a low end for like a magnet or VOAG school?
For the tuition for the
Yeah, like what's the?
So a low end would probably be about, well, the tuition itself is usually around 5,600, and then services could range anywhere
Yeah,
between
all the price stuff.
96
Okay.
to
I think I was more asking about the tuition, just within that on top. Thank you.
The VOAG is higher, right?
VOAG is high.
Yeah.
So, again, this just kind of summarizes where a lot of our special education budget is. A big part of it is in contracted services. That's our ESS services at the high school and the middle school. We have some outside evaluators, our psychiatrists, we do some neuropsychologicals. Those all cost money. Interpreter services, we have more and more families now that need interpreter services, whether that's for school. I mean, this just isn't special ed. This is just students overall. It just happens to fall under the special ed budget. At parent-teacher conferences, at just regular meetings, at PPT meetings, at 504 meetings, field trips, nursing services for summer school, one-on-one nursing services for some of our students, our hearing impaired services. CompuClaim helps oversee our Medicaid, legal fees, PMT training. So that's just a few items that fall under our contracted services. Then our supplies, so all our occupational therapists, our physical therapists, our speech and language pathologists, our special ed teachers. This is the budget to purchase testing materials, therapy materials. And again, it's not just for special education students. A lot of our occupational therapy therapists are purchasing supplies that all students can use in all classrooms. And then equipment is really for our students who have physical or motor disabilities. They may need adaptive equipment. Another big line item is our special education tuition. Matt, this already has taken into consideration excess costs. So if you
So
want
it's
it,
net of excess
if
cost.
you want something broken down with excess costs.
No,
it's
I
in
just
our
wanted
sheet.
to know if the number was net, just because of the way the transportation piece was presented.
So right now, we currently have 25 students attending out-of-district placements, and that's the tuition range, anywhere from $77,000 to up to $280,000. There's where our total tuition and transportation is broken down. And again, this includes 2 tuitions that were unanticipated when I created the budget back in November. And as of last week, we're currently looking at a student that may need to be outplaced, and the tuition's about $156,000.
And what did you budget the 2 unanticipated at?
Total unanticipated, I think is 98,000 for
Each?
each, yeah.
I think it's important too to know that last school year, we always put in unanticipated. A lot of times they're taken out. Last year, we put in 2 unanticipated, they were taken out, and we did end up outplacing 2 students, and I had a student move in this summer that was already outplaced. It kind of offset it this year. We were lucky because we were fortunate to bring 2 students back from outplacement. The students worked really hard. Their goal was to get back, and we were able to bring 2 students back. One at the elementary and one at the high school this year.
But it's also good for the board to know that, right, so special education and this in particular is the one place by law that in the event at the end of the year, there's not enough money to cover these expenses, after the operating budget is expended, we can go back to the town and by statute, they have to fund it. So just keep that in the back of your mind.
We've never had to do that before.
Never had to do that, and you don't wanna be the
Absolutely.
board to have to do that,
Right.
but it is the one place that by law.
Linda, what percentage of the 25 students is mental health related, would you say?
I don't know, no, I don't, I would have to go back and
That's
look at
fine.
them again individually.
How about the two new ones? The two new ones that you just had to do,
The one that's
the ones that
going
you,
out?
the one that you were not.
That's all mental health. Yeah.
We can also, if you wanna email me that question, I can make sure it's included for our workshop.
And in the past, I've given you a lot more information on this. I think we do have like 5 students graduating at the end of this year that are outplaced. So our numbers will be going down, that's reflected.
It's reflected.
So you already have those out, so that's not the 25 students, it was really 30 and then.
That number's reflected in the budget
In the
though,
budget,
that we
yeah.
anticipate.
So you already did
Yes,
that.
that they're going out, we didn't.
I like it to be, you know, we've always been, 10 years ago, about 12 students, 15 students outplaced, and we've been up over 25, 30, and it's just working really hard to get our kids to stay in district, or come back after they worked really hard, and we're going to see our numbers drop a little bit next year.
So I have a question related, kind of piggybacking on Jamie's question, just going back because ESS obviously is in the special education budget, but my question is, well, actually it's 2 questions. One is, are all the students in ESS, do they all have IEPs?
Or 504.
No, right?
At the middle school, it's they have to have a diagnosis, so it's either a 504 or an IEP, same
Okay.
as the high school.
But if they have a 504, they're not necessarily special education students. Okay, so I think that's an important thing to note, and also related to Jamie's question about, you know, the number of outplacements that are related to mental health service needs. Primarily, the students, if not entirely, right, the students who are served by ESS have some mental health challenges, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good thing to sort of overlay here in that it's in the special education budget. Not all of those students who are in the ESS are special education students, and not all of them who have mental health service needs are needing to be outplaced. I think that's a really important thing, as we, the board, but also the town's people think about the cost benefit of having ESS extend.
And like I've emphasized to families, and at our presentation last time, our ESS services are actually more intense than an outplacement.
Mhm.
The amount of services that our students get through the ESS program in district are more highly clinically based than if they were to be outplaced.
Right, and their families. Families
Correct.
don't get that when they're outplaced, generally speaking, right?
And it's a major cost savings to the district.
Absolutely.
Sorry, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then this is the slide about CCTA. We currently have 14 students that reside in Berlin and 9 that reside in Toronto. Yeah.
Total of 23?
Hmm?
Total of 23?
Yeah. Just the last, this was some of our requests, so obviously Effective School Solutions at the middle school, which we kept in the budget. The 2 unanticipated tuitions, which right now are in the budget. I did put in stipends for our Blast and Rise teachers. It's always probably one of our most difficult positions. I'm retaining staff in those positions. I just get concerned that once they leave, it's very hard to find. So it's just a carrot to put out there to keep, and it's a very unique skill set to have. A lot of times these staff not only have our most difficult students, whether they're nonverbal or they have motor issues, but they're also supervising 6, 7, 8, 9 paraprofessionals, which is a constant, because, okay, who's out today? Who's gonna cover which student? Who's gonna cover which lunch? It's also a big clerical task as well as a teaching task.
And special education students are at a premium right now. You can't find special education teachers, not to mention those who are working with those with the most,
And
with the
then
highest needs.
We did put 10 paraprofessionals in. I think this is the first year that I'm scared that all have taken out, and I'll share with you why. 6 of our students are moving from preschool into Blast. This is a big group of kids with significant needs. students that don't talk, students that need a one-to-one adult attached to them all the time for safety reasons, for educational reasons. We also have 2 more preschoolers moving to their home schools that also need that one-to-one support to learn how to do kindergarten. And preschool, they're self-contained, so they're with the same teacher. They don't move throughout the building a lot. What's going to happen, I'm afraid, I don't think we're gonna be able to make it work, is that we'll have to look at our paras throughout the district and where they're supporting, whether they're in a learning center class with a special ed teacher, that they may have to be removed from there in order to fulfill these needs. We support science and social studies at the McGee right now with paraprofessionals. They may have to come out of there. I don't know yet. I'm gonna have to sit down and talk with all the administrators, with all the staff, and see how are we gonna make this work next year. And I understand it's hard to put 10 brand new paraprofessionals in. We always have to take care of our babies and our most neediest and
But-
others first, and that's what I tell our staff. So we'll try to make it work. I'm just not sure how we're gonna do it next year.
But those paras are all dictated by what's written in their IEPs, correct? So we really don't have any
Well,
leverage here.
Some of our, right now, over the past few years, say at the elementary level, the middle school level, and the high school level, we try to spread the special education students out among 3 third grade classes, 4 third grade. We may not be able to do that. We may have to put our special ed students in 2 third grade classes instead of 4 third grade classes. So that's a way that we may have to look, so we can make sure that we meet the services of all our students. So, there are ways to do it.
Are the 10 paraprofessionals in the budget, or were they taken
No,
out?
they were taken out.
They were taken
Oh.
out. Because as I read, I know that the ESS is in.
Yeah.
The unanticipated is in.
Yeah, the other
I
2
didn't-
are
The other, they're out, okay.
So I was thinking those were in, and I was just saying,
No,
like, your
they're
hands
all
are
out.
tied if you included it, because it's dictated by, their IEPs, so you have no leeway, but, so now you're saying you have to get creative
Yes.
to save money. Well,
So I
It might be
applaud you
really
for already
difficult.
doing that creativity.
We
Yeah.
have to look at it. We have to look at it. It's gonna be a hard
seems really
conversation.
difficult, yeah.
It's also gonna make my hard to find paraprofessionals, they're just not out there.
Well, thank you.
Any questions? Again, this is probably my quickest budget presentation, but if you want more detail from me, just let me know, we can get you that information.
Any questions? You guys can always email them to me before the 16th, but. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, athletics. Dave, come on down to the hot seat.
Is this one position? And this is one position? Who is this person right now? It's not.
Thank you for coming.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So, clicker's right here, right? There we go. So when building our budget, Brian asked me to keep it at a 0% increase for obvious reasons. These are the 3 main goals that I always try to take a look at when constructing a budget. Maintaining obviously what we have for the benefit, interest, needs of our students. Providing a safe and secure environment, obviously, for all students. Supporting them, as many people have talked about here before, emotionally, but academically as well. I always have a little portion of our academic awards where we take percentages of student athletes, both at the varsity level and at the JV level. I'm happy to report that in the fall, 88% of our students achieved honors playing sport, which was the highest in my 8 years of being athletic director, both at Lewis Mills and my last 3 years here. And then obviously want to continue to support where we're at now with appropriate funding. So the one major change that has occurred, and this is throughout the state, we've talked about this at our CCC meetings with 31 teams in our conference, is the need for trainers. The cost has exponentially gone up. Select Therapy, I've been in negotiations and contacts with them over the past couple of months when presenting or coming up with this budget number. And next year, it's going to be at a rate of $50,000. And I've locked in a 3-year contract. In comparison with other schools, some other schools are paying in excess of $75,000, $85,000. And a lot of that has to do, from what I'm understanding, is that they're not just needing their bachelor's degree, but their master's degree in training for, in physical therapy, and training for the entire state. So because of that, costs have gone up. So we're actually overall, when looking at this in comparison to other schools, Select Therapy has done an unbelievable job working with our department. Adriana is just, she's unbelievable. She's great with the kids, works unbelievable with kids that have concussions, kids that are injured. Just a great support. So that is pretty much a huge increase that we do have. It's $10,000. But overall, when taking a look at the budget, what I like to do is talk to the coaches individually. We meet, we have conversations about essentials to run the program. A lot of that stuff is expendable items such as tennis balls, football, soccer balls, and the like. And then we take a look at what their programs need overall, things that they would like to have, and things that are really extra, and things that aren't necessarily needed to run the program, but would be very nice. All those things are eliminated. We really focused on conversations about expendable items. So even with the 2 increases of transportation slightly, of $3,000, and the increase of our training staff, our trainer, going $10,000, I still was able to only increase the budget overall to $4,000. So we really took a look at, do we need 10 soccer balls, or could we get away with 8 soccer balls? And, not to an extent where that saved us $6,000, but we really overall took a look at where we are with our programs and what we have. I do feel that the last couple of years with COVID, I was able to allocate some more money in terms of using that money to buy uniforms and to buy items that are expendable. We have a very small surplus, but we nonetheless did a nice job saving some of those expendable items over the past couple of years to get to the point where we're at today. And there's a slight increase in transportation for the middle school at $435. So, when looking at this, talking to the coaches, talking with other ADs at our conference and across the state, our budget is in pretty solid shape. I feel comfortable that we can continue all of our varsity, sub-varsity programs at this rate with a very small increase of 1.14%, considering the $10,000 increase for our trainer.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have a couple. Hopefully they're easy for you, Dave, but if not,
No
just
problem.
send it along. Is 1.14%, I'm impressed you're able to do that considering just the athletic trainer piece alone, but what is the overall athletic budget? Like, what's the number?
The overall budget is, hold on one
And,
second.
and if you don't have it tonight, that's okay, you can just get it to me, it's fine, it's just kind of a reference point.
Sure thing.
Of, we spend this much on athletic.
Yeah.
And then, my other question revolves around the trainer, so you just signed a 3-year contract at 50,
50,000, 52, then 54.5.
can we hire a trainer at that rate and they're in district? Because what I'm hearing is next year, yes, they have a contract with us for 3 years, but guess what, it went up some more, so if you don't pony up some more, we're gonna have to break our contract and we're out. I've just experienced it twice in 2 years. So what is the rate for an athletic trainer? Because if we hire our own, that can't happen anymore. I mean,
So-
to some extent, ultimately, does it make sense at some point with the rate of what they charge, does it make sense that we put them on staff?
So I'm gonna go based upon conversations, cause in our conference meeting, we did have conversations with this. When taking a look at hiring own trainers at schools were trying to do this, the cost was in excess of $70,000+ because of insurance and other factors as well.
Okay.
So the rationale for staying with Select Therapy, it is a savings over the course of not only next year, but moving forward too.
for now, but at some point, from
It
the
could be.
board's perspective, is that something we may have to consider, because they're, like paraprofessionals and frankly, you know, teachers at this point, is they're not out there, and that's why they're going to districts and saying, listen, we'd love to support you, we know we've done it in the past, but now we can't because they've changed the criteria now. And you're right on, it's their master's degrees, so.
If I could jump in for a moment, there has been an opportunity before where districts have tried to hire the current trainers, and they have a contract with Select that you cannot hire them.
Oh, no, I know,
You know,
there's
right,
not,
to
you're
not
right.
recruit, right,
Right, you can't do that, but I'm
Right.
just,
But
like.
at some point, I think you're right, we have to
the
think
lo-
about that.
At the long-range goal, so I applaud you for looking forward, that, and being prepared for it. What you did there is outstanding.
I appreciate it. No, and to your point, I will take a look at that on a yearly basis, and these conversations will obviously be continuing in our conference, because, you know, per CIAC, at all varsity events, when applicable, we need a trainer there present, so it's a necessity without a doubt.
Last question is, what I don't see on here, so I don't know where you covered the cost, but don't we need a shot clock on the basketball hoops next year?
Yes, we do. I'm gonna be using our athletics enterprise account for that information, for that shot clock. The overall budget, by the way, is $392,000.
Oh, thank you.
That doesn't include coaches.
No, not coaching salaries. There's equipment, officials, transportation, supplies, tournament fees.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay, thank you so much.
If something comes up over the next few weeks, by all means, you know, Julian, and she can get back to you and get
Yep.
back to your answers. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Who's up for this one? Jeff and Ashley, or just Jeff? All right, Jeff.
Ashley did all the work behind the scenes for all of it. She doesn't get to sit in the seat, though.
All right, Jeff, you got a lot to follow. You guys are lickety split, and you got a lot of pages.
Yeah, brief.
Make it really easy.
You're
Good
what's
evening.
separating us from adjourning.
No pressure.
There's no pressure.
I warned you, Jeff.
No pressure.
It's amazing the respect I command.
Oh, no, we love hearing you. However,
Listen,
it's almost been 2.5 hours.
good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Brian asked me to do a very short little presentation here on what we're doing with facilities, generally to do with what we've requested as projects for both site and the building, which is one category, excuse me, and capital. Realize this has already been gone over by one of your committees, which is the F&O committee. So Matt and Chairperson and Brian know most of these things, but all you have as far as attachments is really just a list of requests. So you can look at all of those yourself. I am not gonna go through all of these requests. I'm letting you know how much work goes into this, not necessarily by me, but by the staff to come up with what is necessary for their facilities. You have lists of site and building, and I will also take a little more time on capital because it's a nicer conversation. It takes a little bit of a short introduction when you're talking about projects like this. Like I said, the F&O committees review these things. The potential sources for any money for us to do facility improvements are three. One is our general fund, which we're talking about tonight. Secondly is the capital plan budget, which is handled by the town, but it's certainly a resource to us. And the third are grants. Those are the three places we have to look at to get money. The site and building request this year, which you have the list for, was $441,000, actually over that amount. There's an exhibit that goes through all of this stuff. Included in those funds and requests are facility and department requests from Berlin High School, Willard, Central Office, Security Department, IT Department, McGee Middle School, Hubbard Elementary School, and Griswold. Everybody had things to request, and did a good job putting it together and getting the information. Unfortunately, on the budget we're talking about today, which is the superintendent's proposed budget for our general fund, none of these are in the budget.
Nothing on this list?
None of these are. But again, you can see that I'm trying to establish the need relative to how, what we're gonna do relative to the budget is concerned. There is a small amount of funding, $20,000 or more, which is included under the equipment and other line item for, things that may come up. And there's also, as was stated earlier, the CNA improvements that are in there, but that's generally, it. You have none of these site and building, requests here. As usual, what we're gonna be doing is looking for end-of-year funds, some called surplus funds, to see if we can take care of some of these projects. That's not much different than every year. We don't know how many funds we may or may not have, but the F&O committee has always worked in that manner to use those funds that are necessary to then do projects. We use this list for priorities when funds are available. Obviously, if we have no surplus and we have such a tight budget, we hope is not the case, but if we are going to have one, it'll have a negative impact going forward in our facilities because we won't have the kind of money we need to keep doing the improvements and the projects we'd like. On the other hand, we will see what we can do with the budget, as Brian does a great job with it every year. And secondly, there's always grants. We go after grants for a number of things. Doesn't have to do with your general fund budget, but as you probably read in the paper, we just received a $400,000 grant, a challenge grant with Jim Mahoney and the town to do some work down at CCTA. So we'll continue to do those things. But you don't have anything in this budget for site and building at this point, okay? Second thing is just information. Capital plan is not within our general fund budget anyway. But what I'm trying to report here, what Brian has asked me to report, is how are we doing with our capital request for the town, because it is part of the fiscal year budget for the town like ours is. So, our capital requests this year were $1.6 million, already gone over by the F&O committee and submitted to the capital planning committee. Like I said, they're not considered in the general fund or operating budget. The capital improvement plan that the town puts together for the entire budget for their facilities, including education, okay, goes in front of the capital plan committee. We have a representative on the capital plan committee. It's made up of all department heads, town managers, so on and so forth. I get a chance to sit on that committee and argue for what we like to get from our side. The town also submits things from an education standpoint on our facilities to that. The good news is this. At the present time, the finance department for the town, which puts together the capital plan, their preliminary proposal includes $1.23 million for educational improvement.
Off of this list?
Off of this list. And they have a couple that they actually added onto it. I got some comments you'll see. But, so, that goes into their general fund, not ours, their general fund, but still, it's for educational improvements to our facilities. They also, on top of that, I'm gonna tell you which ones they are on the list, they also, on top of that, are authorizing another $945,000 for additional improvements if they have surplus on simply just educational facilities. So there's good news at the capital fund standpoint. On the list itself, I will tell you, our list, you can see the list of improvements that they are saying they would like to take care of in their general fund. I'll give you an idea, because it's good news. Camera improvements, remember, we requested all this stuff, so this comes from us. Camera upgrades, across the district, $195,000. Parking lot at Willard, we've heard that a lot, that's in the budget under LoCIP for $300,000. Doors and hardware at BHS, which have been talked about and are very, very much needed and supported. Resurface of basketball, tennis courts. Replace equipment at Willard School Playground, which we've been after for a couple of years, and that's right at the top of the list. Some energy and infrastructure and consulting, and 3 more vans for our transportation department. So, with the capital plan, we're doing very, very well. The only other comments I really have are, we like to keep that up there supporting us. It's in their budget. We get to do the projects along with them. We get to pick how they're done. It's part of our facilities work, but it's a good coordination with that level of the town. But remember, it's not in this budget. Any questions?
It's hard to ask questions when there's nothing
I
added.
told you it's gonna be yeah.
Any questions for for Jeff.
I don't have a question, I just have a comment, because I know, right, so there's, under site and building requests, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 requests for Berlin High School, right? And Berlin High School still is considered a brand-new school, but guess what? It's 9 or 10 years old now from phase 1. So I am not surprised at all to see that there's some things that maintenance that needs to be done as we're now 9 or 10 years into the building being there, right? So my son was a freshman when it started. He graduated in 2014, and it's now gonna be 2023. So when phase 1 started, that's how many years we go back. So not surprising, I'm glad it's here. And we need to stay on top of it, otherwise we're right back where we started
Listen,
all those years ago.
listen, the fact that at the present time anyways, because of the type of budget that Brian has been speaking about and what we have to do to meet the, not only the needs, but also to make sure that the percentage increase is low, that is not, that doesn't reflect well on these requests. These requests are real requests. These requests
no,
are real needs, not only for the high school, but
As I went
everything.
down, is now all the other buildings are in much
Yeah.
worse condition.
Yeah.
So they need even more, except for Al's. Al's is,
So our process of budgeting, or not budgeting, for building improvements hasn't hurt us too much in the past because we've had the ability to use other funds to get it. We're gonna hope to do the same thing.
But as budgets get tighter and tighter, right, and there's less money at the end of the year, this becomes more of an issue, right? We've been fortunate, realistically, over the last few years. I mean, this is where we've been able to do projects because, quite frankly, is because COVID helped us in that particular case. It gave us money at the end of the year, but when they get tight, then these things get pushed back, and the more they get pushed back, the more they cost.
The only thing I would say, and you're correct, the only thing I would say to that is we've got really good, I believe anyways, being on the capital committee, coordination with the town, their facilities and their money, they're putting more money towards us, because they understand if we can't get it in operating, then
And that's
we've
my
gotta
last,
get it somewhere.
that would be my last comment, is it appears that we've built a good partnership with those committees now that they understand the importance of them, whereas before, I think it was more confrontational than it was partnership, so, well done.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. That was excellent. Enjoyed it. I did. What was 0%? You want to just wrap up with the overall budget review?
That was, you moved into the first, that was my review,
Okay,
the initial.
got it, okay. So again, any questions you have, send them directly to me prior to Monday, January 16th. I will be sending out an email. Just another thing that I want to mention, our joint meeting with the Board of Finance is scheduled for Wednesday, March 1st. I am scheduled to have my baby on February 27th, 2 days before. I did send out an email to Mr. Bornero, just asking if we could move it up a week. I didn't say anything to you guys yet because I was just gonna mention it tonight. If you have an issue with that date, please just send me an email and let me know. He's currently checking with the Board of Finance. Nothing is set, nothing has changed. It was just a thought, because I think it's important, but
You might go early.
I don't know, I can't. I have too much work to do. So
Just
anyway,
that you are.
but if I do, I know the board will represent, and I know that we have plenty of great members to take care of it. But I just, I just figured it's worth a shot, and then we'll probably go early, because that's how it's gonna be. But please let me know if there is an issue with the Wednesday before. So I just wanted to put that on your radar. So again, any questions, even if you ask questions tonight and it was said, oh, we'll get back to you on that, just send those questions anyway, just because I know there was a lot of questions and we'll get back to that. And I know Brian and Ashley and everyone else is working hard to try and keep track of the questions, but just send them along. The more the merrier. I'd rather be as thorough as possible for our next meeting, and our next meeting is in 2 weeks. It's a workshop, so that's gonna be our time as a board to really discuss and get into all the nitty-gritty.
Can I make one statement?
Yep.
I just want to thank Ashley for all the work behind the scenes. She didn't come to the table, but Ashley was a huge driver behind this whole budget. So Ashley helped all of us in the district, so thank you so much for the fine work. I really appreciate it. And Laura Chris is not here. Laura Chris, our data specialist, she pulled most of the data for the budget. Thank you to Laura also, so thank you, Ashley.
Thank you. Anything else before we move on to our next item?
I'm gonna thank everybody that's in the room. You guys, I've sat through a bunch of these, not only here, but in other towns as well, so, you guys put together a well-thought-out and well-presented, initial budget presentation. It's only 8:30, and then we've been through the whole thing. You know, I've sat in here where that would be 11:30. I'm sure that in 2 weeks, Monday will be longer, because there'll be a bunch of questions, but I really thank you for all the work that you put into it now, and I look forward to going through all the detail that's behind it, so just thank you.
Thank you. Last item, is there a motion to adjourn?
To adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Carrie, second by Matt. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Meeting is adjourned at 8:30. Thank you, everyone, for your time this evening.